It is week 12. The fantasy playoffs are on the horizon. You guys are trying to secure a bye, get a playoff spot, get out of the toilet bowl, whatever you're looking to do. I will have you covered today. Week 12 matchups that matter. Start set strategy for every fantasy football matchup, every game on the week 12 slate, going through over-unders and everything in between to help you set your fantasy football lineups. This week, we have 4 teams on bye: the Los Angeles Chargers, Washington Commanders, Miami Dolphins, and Denver Broncos, which means we have 14 games and 7 in the 1 p.m. window, kicking it off with the New York Jets taking on the Baltimore Ravens on the road. The Jets are 13.5-point underdogs. They are, of course, starting Tyrod Taylor for this game because Justin Fields has been benched. It sounds like they want to get a good look at Mason Taylor and Adonai Mitchell and some of their younger, more developing players, and Justin Fields doesn't really give them the opportunity to do that because they don't trust him to throw the football. So over under a 44.5 points, pace of play the slowest on the slate. This is not a very fantasy-friendly atmosphere unless you are a Baltimore Raven. You do not want to be really starting any New York Jets outside of Breece Hall. Lamar Jackson on the Ravens side, of course, going to be in your lineup. This is a big game for Lamar Jackson. He has not posted a top-scoring fantasy week, really, outside of that first week that he was back from injury, because he has not really been that great. As a passer this year, he's taken the most sacks this season than he has in his career through 11 games or through 10 games or whatever he's played so far. Derrick Henry, definitely a great start this week, given the game script and the 14-ish points that they're favored by. Zay Flowers, also a great start this week. I saw a stat on Twitter. Ian Hartitz tweeted this out, that Zay Flowers has basically been a wide receiver 3, but no better in 8 straight games. So he's been consistently like 8 to 15 fantasy points, but you're not getting those big performances out of Zay Flowers. Hopefully that changes this week. Sit all of your New York Jets wide receivers. No Adonai Mitchell. Nobody else. Stream Mark Andrews. He could score a touchdown in this game, given that the Ravens are implied to score 29 points. And if you do need to start a pass catcher on the New York Jets, I think that Mason Taylor is the best option because he's running a lot of routes. He's at the tight end position. You could use him as a streamer if you needed to. Baltimore's defense is definitely in play, given that they're at home, and the Jets are turnover-prone offense. Their kicker, Tyler Loop, also in play as well. The stat of the game here is, since Lamar Jackson's return, the Ravens are 7th in EPA per rush as an offense, and it has not been Lamar Jackson really contributing to that. That has mainly been the result of Derrick Henry playing a lot better. He is 2nd in the NFL in rushing yards since then. This is a league average run defense on the road for a Ravens team that really feels due. This feels like an offense that is dying for a 40 bomb, and I think that the Ravens will get it this week. Chicago Bears taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bears are 2.5-point home favorites here. 45.5-point over-under. The Bears being favorites over a team that has Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem like that's a sentence that's been uttered in about 20 years. So the Bears definitely looking for some revenge on the guy that's tormented them for so many years. Big time game. Aaron Rodgers, he is very, very good against this team. I believe he's like 46-29 against the spread against them. Start Caleb Williams versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is definitely a great start this week. Jaylen Warren, assuming he's healthy, and this is an injury that we have to monitor, make sure he is in your lineup, assuming he's out there. If he's not out there, of course, Kenny Gainwell was a big waiver ad this week, and you could throw him out there. I would say the worst case scenario here is that Jaylen Warren is like a game time decision, because then you don't really feel great about either of them. But even in that situation, I would still start Jaylen Warren. DeAndre Swift going to be out there for you, although it is a tough matchup. You could probably sit Kyle Menengai given the matchup that the run game has. Rome Odunze definitely going to be in your lineup, as is DK Metcalf. Those 2 number 1 receivers have really great matchups on the outside. I do think you can get a little cute with the ancillary receivers of the Bears, but I wouldn't do it with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you need to start DJ Moore, I personally am in the Flock League this week. Pittsburgh's 31st against fantasy wide receivers, so DJ Moore or even Luther Burden, if you really wanted to, are in play if you need a flex option. Colston Loveland in play if you need a tight end option. Him and Cole Kmet are splitting snaps right now, but Colston Loveland, very talented, efficient on his touches, and both kickers are inside my top 10. Both these 2 kickers have a chance to pipe in some field goals here. The stat of the game is that the Bears are 32nd in the NFL in yards before contact per attempt allowed. So whether it is Jaylen Warren, who could be healthy for this game, or Kenneth Gainwell, which I'm kind of hoping for in my home league because I would like to start Kenneth Gainwell, it's a cake matchup. This is a matchup that sets up very well for the run game of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's also a good dumpster dive game if you guys need some deeper plays. I already mentioned DJ Moore and Luther Burden. Colston Loveland, also a good deeper play. One of the Steelers tight ends, realistically, if you needed one, you could count on a touchdown potentially for Jonnu Smith or for Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth. And both quarterbacks are definitely in play as well. Caleb Williams, a good streamer. Aaron Rodgers, not as good because he's coming into the game with an injury. But if you had to play him, I mean, he has owned this team. historically in his career. Moving into the New England Patriots taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. This game, the spread has moved quite a bit all over the place because of Joe Burrow's health. Now, I'm going to look live right now to see what it is settled in at, because it was 6.5 when I made this graphic yesterday, and I do want to see if the market is moving it. Okay, so yeah, it's at 5.5 right now. So the Patriots are now 5.5 point favorites because it does look like Joe Burrow could be on track to return. Joe Burrow, of course, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He is going to really, really help out the Cincinnati Bengals, and Cincinnati plus 5.5 with Joe Burrow out there doesn't seem like a bad bet if you guys are making one. The over-under this game is 50 points. Overcatching a lot of the steam, and I think a large part of that is potentially Joe Burrow returning. The pace of play is top 5 on the slate. New England's DVOA and Cincinnati's DVOA advantage, both top 10 on the slate as well, with New England's being number 1 because the Bengals, I believe, in overall DVOA as a defense are setting like historically bad defensive DVOA numbers to the tune of like potentially the worst defense of all time. So you are starting pretty much every Patriot that you can. New England's quarterback, Drake May, is going to be in your lineup. Trevion Henderson is going to be in your lineup. We will probably get, if I had to guess, Ramondre Stevenson returning for this game. He was limited in practice in back-to-back days. We'll see what he does in Friday's practice. I would expect him to probably be returning for this game, but even in that situation, I still think Trevion Henderson is a top 10 to 12 back. If Stevenson is out again, I mean, this is a top 5 back this week. So keep that in mind if you're playing against Trevion like myself. Stephon Diggs is going to be out there for you. Hunter Henry going to be out there for you. I'll talk about this game because this is also another good dumpster dive game, but Kayshon Boutte, who's fully practicing as of Wednesday, could also be out there for you too. T. Higgins is expected to see shadow coverage versus Christian Gonzalez because, of course, Jamar Chase will not play in this game because he spit on Jalen Ramsey and is suspended. So T. Higgins, with Jamar out there, this would have been an easy matchup because T would be freed up away from Christian Gonzalez. But now that he's the only threat out there, he is going to see that shadow coverage. Chase Brown, very difficult matchup on the ground, but he's been pretty good since Flacco took over, and especially if Burrow comes back for this game. Sit both defenses, too many points in this one. And if you do need a kicker, I do think that New England's kicker is in play here, and even Evan McPherson if you're desperate. Stat of the game here is that the Patriots have been a force stopping the run. We've been talking about it for weeks now. They're 5th in EPA per play against the run, sub 60 rushing yards per game allowed, which is number 1 in the NFL. But the Bengals, quietly, after a horrible start to the season, are 2nd in the NFL in rushing EPA per play as an offense. So this is a game that is actually strength on strength. It doesn't seem like it, but the Bengals have been quite efficient running the ball, especially since Joe Flacco has taken over the starting job. And again, this is another good dumpster dive game. If you guys do need a wide receiver, Andre Yoshivach, if he's available, you got to throw him into your lineup. I think he's a fine play without Jamar Chase. He scored 3 touchdowns in the 5 games that T. Higgins missed last year. Joe Flacco, if you need a quarterback and Burrow isn't playing, definitely a viable streaming option. Hunter Henry, if you need a tight end. Ramondre Stevenson, if he comes back healthy, is a viable flex option. Even Noah Fant, not a terrible streamer, and Boutte also back healthy as well. Just keep an eye for the tight end position on Mike Gesicki, because if he's playing in this game, I probably would steer clear of Noah Fant in that situation. Detroit Lions taking on the New York Giants. They are 10.5 point home favorites, implied for over 30 points, which is the highest on the entire slate. The over-under is 50, and the over is catching the steam with Detroit's DVOA advantage being a top 3 marker on the slate. Pretty straightforward. You know to start all your Detroit Lions: Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and of course no Sam Laporta now. So that has bumped up those target shares for those wide receivers. If you really wanted to get cute and start Brock Wright, you could, but I probably wouldn't. On the Giants side of things, Jackson Dart, ever since he's taken over the starting job, if you remove games where he just had one-off carries or whatever, he's been a 23 point per game quarterback, and that was despite leaving his last game in the 4th quarter with a head injury. So this is a dude that only Josh Allen has been better than since he's taken over the starting job because of those rushing tendencies, his ability to rush in the football for 7 rushing touchdowns this year. Keep that in mind, man. Jackson Dart in every week play because of that rushing floor that he's giving you. And Tyrone Tracy, also a very solid option this week, despite the bad matchup. He has been getting the majority of the work. I wouldn't mess around with Devin Singletary, although he could snipe Tyrone Tracy on the goal line as he's been prone to do. Wan'Dale Robinson, definitely a flex viable play given the over-under, and same goes for Theo Johnson. You can also play Detroit's defense and kicker if you need to. Stat of the game here is that a whopping 45 explosive runs have taken place on the New York Giants defense. That is why they are number 32 in the NFL in EPA per rush allowed. They are dead last in every rushing defense metric that you can possibly find. Translation, Gibbs and Montgomery masterclass coming, and I like David Montgomery to go higher than 50.5 rushing yards as a result. That'll be the first pick of our 4-pick'em entry in this Matchups That Matter video. Minnesota taking on Green Bay on the road, divisional NFC North matchup. The Green Bay Packers are 6.5-point home favorites here. Green Bay's implied for just over 23 points. Over-under is not exciting, just 41, and the pace of play, despite being quite high. This is a matchup in which it's a divisional game. The quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, and honestly, Jordan Love himself, have been struggling as of late. This could be a bit more of a defensive slugfest than I think people would want to see. Not sure about weather conditions, but it is in Green Bay. It's late November. It's possible that we get some weather in this one too. Jordan Love, if you need a streaming quarterback, he's not a terrible option, but you might have better options out there. Aaron Jones, a very good startable running back. Also, of course, you're starting Josh Jacobs if healthy. We got to keep an eye on the injury reports right now, because if Josh Jacobs misses this game, then of course Emmanuel Wilson will be a top 24, 26-ish play for me at the running back position. But just keep in mind, it is a difficult matchup. Minnesota is quite good against the run. As of right now, if I had to guess, I do think Josh Jacobs will miss this game and return in week 13 for Thanksgiving. But Josh Jacobs is a tough SOB, man. It wouldn't shock me if he played through this injury. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison both in play, but just keep in mind that J.J. McCarthy has struggled mightily. As we've noticed from both Jefferson and Addison, their numbers have dipped since J.J. McCarthy has come back from injury. They were actually better with Carson Wentz. Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson definitely in play, because even though Minnesota was traditionally very good against the fantasy wide receiver position for the month of September or so, they have kind of fallen off in the last couple of weeks and given up a lot more points to the wide receiver position since, I don't know, week 5, week 6. They kind of took the turn for the worst as a defense. If you need a streaming tight end, you could throw TJ Hawkinson out there, but I just don't really trust this offense very much, and that is why I'm going to be taking the Green Bay defense and kicker as well, because I do think that this could be a pretty big win for Green Bay, and I actually kind of like them -6.5 if I was betting this game. Stat of the game here is that J.J. McCarthy has completed a league worst among all starting quarterbacks, 52.9% of his passes, and he leads all quarterbacks with 6.1% of his plays as turnover worthy. So he has been playing bad on all fronts, inaccurate, not taking care of the football. The 4th-rated Packers defense on the road is his next challenge, and I do think if you have the Packers defense, you could be looking at a 20-plus point performance from them, and I like J.J. McCarthy to go lower than a lot of things, but I think longest completion is my favorite, because I don't think he's going to be uncorking a ton of deep balls in this game, in that game environment. But you definitely don't love to see that if you are a Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison manager. So Indianapolis Colts taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 3.5-point home favorites here. Chiefs still getting respect from Vegas, even despite having a 500 record. The over-under is 50.5 points, which seems a little bit high for me, given the game environment and the pace of play. There's a lot of lean towards the under. The pace of play is not very high, but both offenses have top 8 advantages over the opposing defense. Patrick Mahomes is going to be in your lineup. I do think you can stream Daniel Jones, although keep in mind he hasn't been as good as of late. And also, too, this is on the road in Arrowhead. It's a very tough atmosphere to be playing in. I'm not breaking any news when I say to start Jonathan Taylor, but Isaiah Pacheco is an interesting conversation, because he was a full participant in Wednesday's practice with that knee injury that he suffered before their bye, but then he was downgraded to a limited participant yesterday's practice. So keep an eye on Isaiah Pacheco. I would say if he is healthy, he's ready to go, he's off the injury report, whatever the case is, you can flex him as a top 30-ish play at the running back position. But I would say if you have both Pacheco and Hunt, you're probably rooting for Pacheco to be out yet again, because I do think that Kareem Hunt will get the majority of the workload, as we've seen in the last 2 games without Isaiah Pacheco out there. But just keep an eye on those 2 running backs. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy you can throw out there. I know Worthy's been really bad as of late, but I do think given this game environment, the over-under, and the fact that he's been just missed on a couple of deep bombs, you probably got to keep throwing him out there and hope that he starts to take the Jameson Williams ascension, where some of those deep balls end up connecting. Patrick Mahomes starts playing better, and so on and so forth. I think at home for the Kansas City Chiefs, they should be on pace to have a better game. Pittman, Pierce, Downs, you can throw those guys out there. Again, I would probably say only Pittman is the must start, but if you had to flex Pierce, if you had to flex Downs, I don't think that's outrageous. Tyler Warren also going to be out there for you. Travis Kelce been an absolute heat seeker the last couple of weeks. Those 2 guys are both top 5 tight ends for me. And then both kickers are in play. Michael Badgley he missed a kick in the Berlin game before the bye, but if he had hit that kick, he literally would have been a 15 fantasy point performer. And of course, we also have Harrison Butker, who's been pretty decent this year. Stat of the game is just keep an eye on the under, man. Chiefs are at home, and their defense allows the fewest offensive plays per game to opposing offenses. So I do think that this game could go under, and the Sharps kind of agree with that sentiment there. Seattle Seahawks taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Seahawks are 13.5-point road favorites here, which is a little bit of a sketchy total considering that Tennessee has put up a decent fight at Nissan Stadium. The last time they were a huge underdog on their home field, we saw them kind of cover the spread against the Los Angeles Chargers. Seattle is implied for 27 points, though. 40.5-point over-under. The over is catching quite a bit of the steam. I do think that there could be some turnovers in this game, some short fields, some touchdowns from running backs and whatnot. Seattle's DVOA advantage is a top 4 mark on the slate, so you feel pretty good about starting pretty much everybody on the Seahawks. Of course, JSN having a revelation-like season. Sam Darnold, I think, is due for a bounce back. If you need a streaming quarterback, I don't think he's a bad option. Kenneth Walker has one of the best matchups on the field. The Tennessee run defense has been pretty putrid across the board. They did shut down Kamani Vidal a couple of weeks ago, but other than that, they've been pretty much dominated by most run games that they've gone up against. And we're getting some reports this week that Kenneth Walker could see more opportunities, has earned more opportunities. That's the whispers that we're hearing. And even since the bye, as I talked about in the skyrocketing video earlier this week, he has actually seen his workload increase. His 2-minute drill snaps are up. His inside the 5 carries are up. His overall opportunity share and snap share is up. It's not up a ton. We might see a larger uptick this week, but it is up marginally to the point that in a great matchup, you got to start him as a top 24 play. Tajay Spears is the starter that I'd be interested in because they're 13.5-point underdogs. I do think that he'll be the guy that catches the passes and runs the routes in this game. But given that they're at home, I mean, if you were absolutely desperate, you could throw Tony Pollard out there. I just probably wouldn't. I would sit all Tennessee wide receivers. That being said, though, if Alec Iomanner is out for this game, you could probably throw Shamir DK out there because we don't have Calvin Ridley. He's on IR, out for the season. And if Iomanner is out, I think DK could have 7-8 targets in this one. AJ Barner is a streamable tight end as well, just because of the Seahawks implied total. And then if you need a defense, Seahawks definitely a good one. And Jason Myers, the kicker, also a good one. Stat of the game here, Sam Darnold, who is currently PFF's second highest graded quarterback in the league, had his worst game of the season last week. Everybody knows that. 4 interceptions, a 39.2 PFF grade. But the Titans are a get-right spot. They've won just one game this year, and the only game that they won was a game in which the Cardinals blew on multiple fronts. I like Sam Darnold to go higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns. I do think that if you want to throw a Barner, a Shaheed out there because you're just hoping to catch some of that implied total, not a bad option for you there. Moving into the 4 p.m. window, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Jaguars are 3-point road favorites in this one, which seems a little bit sketchy to me because the Cardinals haven't looked terrible with Jacoby Brissett, and at home, I think getting 3 points of wood is kind of intriguing. 47.5-point over-under. I do think this one could be going over, the over catching a little bit of the steam according to the Sharps. The pace of play is top 4 on the slate as well. Given the game environment here, I do think that both quarterbacks are within play. The Jaguars are favored, implied for 25 points. The Cardinals had Jacoby Brissett last week set the NFL all-time in-game completions record because he is just uncorking it like crazy, and they're on their like 5th string running back, so they just have to throw the ball even without Marvin Harrison out there. We saw Michael Wilson catch like 15 passes for like 185, and he is of course going to be in your starting lineup if you guys need a wide receiver because Harrison is out yet again. I do think that in week 13 Harrison could return, so if you have Michael Wilson, he has another big week this week, you probably want to be selling high on him. I do think that the recipe for the Jaguars will be the recipe that it's been since the bye. Travis Etienne, Byshell Tootin, assuming they're healthy because both of them are entering this game with an injury. Travis Etienne with a shoulder, Byshell Tootin with an ankle. They ran the ball 47 times last week. Etienne had 20-plus opportunities in every game since the bye, and the Cardinals are 27th in run defense grade. So that is going to be the formula for Jacksonville. Bam Knight, if you need a starter, is definitely fine if you can throw him out there because DeMercado is out with a high ankle sprain. Lots of injuries in this game to talk about. Trey McBride, of course, being Trey McBride, he's having a generational heater of a week and season. The last couple of weeks here. Jacksonville's defense and kicker are in play, but keep in mind you don't really want to start road defenses unless they're favored by like 10-plus points usually. And then the kicker, Cam Little, is also inside my top 12 as well. If you do need to dumpster dive in this game, I think it's a good game environment to do it. Both quarterbacks, Michael Wilson, Brenton Strange coming back from injury, Bam Knight, Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, of course. You could definitely throw out some, like, let's say, fringe flex options from this game environment and just kind of hope for the best there. Moving into the Shedeur Sanders debut here. Cleveland Browns at Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are 4-point home favorites. The Browns have been pretty bad traveling out west, so just keep that in mind. But this is Shedur's debut here, and I'm intrigued to see what he looks like. That's the only intriguing part of this game because the over-under is 36 points and the under is catching a shit ton of steam. It could be a messy, sloppy affair because both of these DVOA advantages are actually 2 of the 3 worst on the entire slate. So this could be a disgusting game. What does Shedur really look like? Does he look like a guy who should have went in the first round or in the second round, or does he look like the NFL was correct about him? I think he's going to have a lot to prove in this game, and I'm excited to see it. That being said, you're not starting any quarterbacks from this game. The only must-starts that you have to throw out there are the running backs and Brock Bowers. Unless you are desperate, I probably wouldn't mess with Trey Tucker. I probably wouldn't mess with Jerry Jeudy. The one intriguing thing here, too, is that David Njoku has missed practice in 2 straight days, Wednesday and Thursday. And Harold Fannin, assuming David Njoku is out, did run a lot more routes that one game that Njoku missed. And I think that Fannin would be in for a lot of targets in this game from Shedur over the middle of the field, assuming that David Njoku is out. And even if David Njoku is playing, I think that Fannin sees a little bit of an uptick regardless there. So those are the guys that I feel like you have to start. Judkin's not a pretty solid matchup there. Genty has a tough matchup. Brock Bowers a tough matchup, but you got to throw those guys out there. Las Vegas defense and Cleveland defense, given the over-under of this game, both in play, both because Cleveland's a great defense, even though they're on the road and underdogs, and then the Raiders are at home and favored, so that's why their defense is in play there, and it is also a rookie quarterback making his first start. 2 of the best pass rushers in football. They could probably get home for a strip sack or a couple of sacks. We saw Miles coming off what a 4-sack performance last week. Stat of the game here is that Shedur Sanders makes his first start against a Raiders defense that is 23rd in EPA per play. Let's hope that the first team reps that he took this week can make up for a 27.4 passing grade against the Ravens last week and 4 of 16 passing, with basically just that 1 completion to Fannin as the only thing you can hang your hat on there. So moving into the best game of the 4 p.m. window, we have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is like 31-13 against the spread against Philadelphia, especially when he's at home. So the fact that they're getting 3.5 points of wood at home in a divisional matchup where their offense is second in the NFL in points seems a little bit odd to me. It seems like we're putting a little bit too much respect on the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Not that it's not good and it hasn't shut down the Packers and the Lions and some of these other great teams. I just think the Cowboys at home might be a little bit of a different animal. 47.5 point over under, the under catching some steam. Philadelphia's DVOA is the second highest advantage, but keep in mind that the Cowboys are getting a little healthier on defense. DeMarvion Overshown was back last week. They got Siobhan Revell, the cornerback, in the secondary back. And of course, they traded for Quinnen Williams, who seemed to make a pretty big difference in their run defense specifically. Jalen Hurts is going to be in your lineup. Both running backs going to be in your lineup, of course. Saquon Barkley and Javonte Williams, both of them actually have very good matchups in this one. George Pickens is expected to see shadow coverage from Quinyon Mitchell, which I'll get into in the stat of the game, but he did shadow him in week 1, and because he's the main outside receiver and they move CeeDee Lamb all over the formation, I think it was easier for them to just take away George Pickens and then scheme against CeeDee Lamb, but we'll see how that affects it. It's CeeDee Lamb at 110 receiving yards on 13 targets in week 1. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going to be in your lineup given the game environment and the Cowboys secondary, and of course CeeDee Lamb, an every week starter. Both tight ends obviously in play. Jake Ferguson, Dallas Goedert, both top 10 tight ends on the season, so you can definitely throw them out there. Both kickers have 2 of the 3 easiest matchups on the entire week, so Jake Elliott and Brandon Aubrey definitely going to be in your lineup. I would say the only thing I'm mildly concerned about as a starter of like the fantasy relevant players in this game is Dak Prescott. I don't think I really want to start him because even though he's at home, this is a very tough matchup. This is a defense that did have his number in week 1, but again, Cowboys at AT&T Stadium are usually a different animal, and Dak does traditionally do pretty well against this team. Stat of the game here is that Quinyon Mitchell has the 3rd lowest completion rate among corners despite shadowing all season some of the league's best wide receivers. He is expected to shadow George Pickens this week, who is currently 2nd in the NFL with 908 receiving yards. So that will be the matchup to watch for sure. Atlanta Falcons taking on the New Orleans Saints, NFC South battle. Kind of a ho-hum game environment, so I can speed through this one. The over-under is 39.5 points. The over catching some steam here. Pace of play is the fastest on the entire slate, so Kirk Cousins v. Tyler Shuck could end up resulting in a lot more fantasy-relevant names here than we maybe think. I think the only must-starts in this game are Alvin Kamara, who is coming off of the bye week, but he is performing a lot better. Hopefully that ankle injury has healed itself up. This is a really good matchup against Atlanta. Bijan Robinson, who of course is an elite fantasy running back, a little bit of a league average matchup for him. Chris Olave, expected to see some coverage against AJ Terrell, which I'll get into in a second. Darnell Mooney, if you really want to mess with it, I personally don't have the stomach to do it because even though he was good with Cousins last year, he's just been banged up all season. I don't really want to trust him. The guy that I think benefits most from the Drake London injury is Kyle Pitts, who has the 16th rated matchup against fantasy tight ends. And in the game against Miami, where Drake London was out and Kirk Cousins started, I believe Kyle Pitts had like 10 targets in that game. So I do think that the volume is going to head number 8's way. Juwan Johnson in play since the Rashid Shaheed trade. In that one game, we saw him get a lot more targets. And then if you need a defense, I think Atlanta's defense is in play. But I honestly don't think that New Orleans' defense is not a terrible option either, because Kirk Cousins can't really move and the Saints are at home and they're actually slightly favored. Stat of the game here, even though it's not an official shadow coverage, AJ Terrell faces the 4th most targeted wide receiver in football with Chris Olave here. Terrell has also not given up a touchdown this season, so we'll see how much those two guys are matched up. I think when you have a clear number one, Terrell typically shadows a clear number one, which is what Olave has been since Rashid Shaheed has left the team. Los Angeles Rams taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. I am quite worried for this game as a Buccaneers fan, because after gut-wrenching losses to the Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots in back-to-back weeks, I fear that we're about to lose 3 in a row against what I just consider a superior team at home here. Rams are 6.5-point favorites. Los Angeles is implied for 28 points. The over-under of 49.5 seems a little sketchy. Now, I know I said that about the Bills game last week. I don't have a lot of faith in our offense. It's not an anti-Rams take. I just think that we might have a hard time scoring. Under is catching some steam here. The pace of play, 27.9, which is second highest on the entire slate here. Los Angeles Rams have the 9th highest DVOA advantage as well. And when you look at, I'm just pulling up the injury report for Chris Godwin here, because I do think that's a major factor for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How do they look with Chris Godwin out there? Because I think, by all indications, Bucky Irving is going to be out for this game. Chris Godwin logged a full practice on Thursday. Now, we haven't quite gotten Friday's practice report yet, but I do think it's possible that he's playing in this game. And Bucky is going to be out. It's pretty much already been announced that. So we are going to see Sean Tucker. We are going to see Rachaad White split carries again. Again, I don't love the matchup for Sean Tucker. I know everybody's going to want to start him coming off a 3-touchdown game, but this profiles as a Rachaad White game script where they're going to need to throw the ball from behind, and Rachaad White's the pass-catching back, runs the routes, catches the passes. If I had to start one of them, I would, in fact, start Rachaad White, even though you kind of want to ride the wave on Sean Tucker, and I do think he'll get more carries in this one. Stream Matthew Stafford. If you need a quarterback, Kyron Williams is going to be in your lineup. Emeka Egbuka going to be in your lineup, who apparently is going to see shadow coverage from Emmanuel Forbes. Not sure why. Emmanuel Forbes ain't big enough to be shadowing Emeka. He's too strong. Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, both very, very good matchups on the outside. And Cade Otton, if you need a streaming tight end, I think he's within play here. Again, keep an eye on Chris Godwin's health. If Chris Godwin is out, then you could probably put Tez Johnson out there if you needed to. Rams defense definitely in play, and Tampa Bay's kicker Chase McLaughlin, given that he's like a top 5 kicker in fantasy this year, definitely in play as well. The stat of the game here is that the Bucs are likely without PFF's highest graded cornerback Jamel Dean, who got injured in the Buffalo game, hasn't practiced all week so far, who's allowed just a 43% completion percentage this season and the lowest passer rating in the NFL when targeted among all cornerbacks. So this is a legit big loss for them. And his primary matchup was, guess who? Puka Nacua this week. So if you guys are looking for a big Puka game, I think it could be coming here. I just don't think we're going to be able to tackle this guy. Our tackling was poor last week. And without Jamel Dean out there, I just don't think we're going to be able to cover him. So dumpster dives if you need one. Godwin if healthy. Tez Johnson if not. Cade Otton a good stream. Bucks running backs, good flexes. Don't start Baker Mayfield if you don't have to. I promise you, I know he seems like an every week starter. I just don't want to mess with it. Moving into the next game and the final game of the slate here, we have the San Francisco 49ers at home on Monday Night Football taking on the Carolina Panthers. It feels like I was in 8th grade the last time the Carolina Panthers were on Monday Night Football, but here we are. Carolina getting a primetime Monday night game against a big market San Francisco team. 48.5-point over-under. Of course, we saw Brock Purdy return last week and really immediately ignite that connection with George Kittle, who scored 2 touchdowns. Of course, both of those guys can be in your lineup. Carolina is not an overly daunting defense, especially on the road when San Francisco is favored by 7 points. Rico Dowdle got to be out there for you. You guys know that. Christian McCaffrey, of course, going to be out there for you, as he always is. And Tedero McMillan, who had his breakout game last week, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has got to be a great start this week against the 21st ranked San Francisco 49ers secondary. George Kittle, of course, having a monster game with Brock Purdy back. Ricky Pearsall, I think you can throw out there as a top 25 to 30-ish wide receiver. I know he seems hard to trust, but it was his first game back. He is ramping up a little bit. I think he'll be a lot more trustworthy this week, as will Juwan Jennings, with more chemistry and more connection with Brock Purdy in his second game back. If you need a streaming quarterback, I don't think Bryce Young's a terrible option. And if you got a dumpster dive here too, I don't think Xavier Legette is a terrible option, who looked great last week as well, assuming he is coming into the game healthy, no limitations or anything like that. San Francisco's defense is in play, as is their kicker. Stat of the game here is that Bryce Young just threw for 1/4 of his seasonal passing yards in one game against the Atlanta Falcons. He now gets a 49ers defense that ranks 29th in passing EPA per play. So you can trust Tedero and McMillan. You can trust Rico Dowdle. And again, I even think that you could throw Xavier Legette out there if you were really desperate, and Bryce Young himself if you were desperate, because I do think that Bryce Young is starting to come into his own a little bit. Maybe it's just that he always does well against the Falcons and he'll look like a pumpkin on Monday Night Football, but I think that we're going to see some more good Bryce Young down the stretch, and I think he's going to cement himself as the clear starter going into 2026 because he's still only 24 years old and he's still getting better, and I'm one of the few people on earth that still believe in Bryce Young. So the Puka one will actually close out our entry. If you guys want to tail our picks, these are the 4 that we're rolling with. I'm doing it straight here, 50% profit boost token added in. If you guys do want to tail it, head on over to underdogfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE at signup. If you guys are new on Underdog, you will also get a gimme pick to add into this entry. You'll also probably have a profit boost token yourself if you guys want to check your lobbies. And of course, when you play your first $5, you get $100 in bonus entries for using that promo code stock. So check that out. That'll be linked down below in the description. Streamers on the week here, streaming quarterbacks. I like Jordan Love versus Minnesota. Again, keep an eye on the weather. Jacoby Brissett versus Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence versus Arizona, also in that same game. Both very good streaming options given the game environment. Sam Darnold at Tennessee. Like I said, I think it'll be a bounce back for him. And then Bryce Young, as I just made mention to, with the San Francisco game on Monday Night Football. Streaming tight ends, Hunter Henry, the cream of the crop this week because of the matchup against Cincinnati. Theo Johnson, a pretty good option given the game script, and Jackson Dart returning. Juwan Johnson getting the targets without Rashid Shaheed there. Colson Loveland getting a great matchup versus Pittsburgh. And then Harold Fannin, like I said, if David Njoku is out, I would probably bump him up to like 2 or 3 on this list. But assuming David Njoku plays but is limited, or plays but is still injured, I would have him as a top 5 streamer this week. Top 5 defenses. Oh, also too, if you need to go deeper at the tight end position, I also don't mind TJ Hawkinson. I also don't mind Cade Otton, like I said as well, just in case you guys need some deeper names. And then top 5 and top 10 defenses here. Seattle at Tennessee, my number 1 defense. Baltimore versus New York Jets. Cleveland at Las Vegas. Green Bay versus Minnesota. Las Vegas versus Cleveland in that same game. New England at Cincinnati. Although I will say, if Joe Burrow is playing for that game, I'd probably bump New England at Cincinnati outside of my top 10. Detroit versus New York Giants, Jacksonville at Arizona, San Francisco versus Carolina, Los Angeles Rams versus Tampa Bay. And then my top 10 kickers, Brandon Aubrey, Chris Boswell, Cairo Santos, Tyler Loop, Jake Bates, Jason Myers, Chase McLaughlin, Cam Little, Harrison Butker, Jake Elliott, and then also Michael Badgley just missed the cut. Brandon McManus, the Packers kicker, just missed the cut. A lot of other guys that you could start this week. Just look for high over-unders, look for high implied point totals. That's a pretty good guiding missile there for kicker talk. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you got some value from this video. Hopefully I helped you set your fantasy football lineups. Leave me a like down below, especially if I've been helping you on a weekly basis all season. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. If you're not subscribed, I don't know what the hell you're doing. It is totally free to do so, and we really appreciate it. And still about 50, 60% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel and still watching avidly. So not really sure what that's about. Just hit the subscribe button and thank us later, because we will be helping you all season into the fantasy playoffs, into the Dynasty offseason, and of course next year when it comes time to redraft those fantasy football teams. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Again, if you want to tail our pick'em entry, that'll be linked down below in the description in the pinned comment. Rest of season rankings, weekly rankings are all up to date over on flockfantasy.com. Start your 7-day free trial today using the promo code FSE. You sign up, you get a 7-day free trial. You see what the site's all about. If you don't like it, then you don't have to pay anything. If you do like it, you can sign up for an annual, get a free team review. You can sign up for a monthly, sign up for a season pass to get a little bit of a discount on the rest of the year, and some trade questions and start sit questions. But all of that will be linked down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.